Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Nature Connects, the Nature Conservancy in Massachusetts webinar series that connects you with scientists and nature experts from New England and around the world. Thank you to everyone for joining us. I'm Deb Markowitz, the State Director for TNC in Massachusetts, and your host for today. We're lucky to be joined by Vikki Spruill. She's the President and CEO of the New England Aquarium in Boston. Vikki's worked throughout her career to strengthen ocean conservation. In her current role at the aquarium, she seeks to combine the convening power of the aquarium's visitors with cutting-edge scientific research and education to advocate for vital and vibrant oceans. Prior to joining the aquarium, Vikki was president and CEO of the Council on Foundations, and before that, she led the Ocean Conservancy. Vikki also founded the Trash-Free Seas Alliance, an industry collaborative that's produced seminal research on the impacts of plastics in the ocean, as well as SeaWeb, an innovative initiative that worked at the intersection of policy, science, and communication in support of ocean conservation. So for the next 20 minutes or so, Vikki will share with us the importance of ocean conservation and some of the great work the aquarium is doing to protect our ocean resources. We'll then open it up for your questions. As you think of questions, please share them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any technical issues, please reach out to us via the chat box. Thanks again for joining us today, and take it away, Vikki.
Thank you so much, Deb. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you over these last several months, and I am so grateful to you for this invitation to join you today. I'm so happy to be talking to, I think, some kindred spirits, to be talking about a topic and a passion that we share, and concentrating on things we can affect, actually, especially during a time when everything feels so much out of our control. I'll start off by saying that we at the New England Aquarium focus more narrowly than the Nature Conservancy does when it comes to what we're working to preserve, your land and water, and we're exclusively ocean focused, although I know we also know it's all connected. And we also know that climate change is the existential threat facing our planet. It impacts everything, including our ocean. Okay, so why the ocean? A little primer just to get us all on the same page. Quite clearly, the ocean is the lifeblood of our planet. Our planet maybe could have been called ocean, actually, instead of Earth. It covers more than 70% of the Earth and provides more than 50% of the oxygen in our atmosphere. About 97% of the Earth's water can be found in the ocean. It shapes our weather and our currents, our climate patterns. For decades, the ocean has been serving as a buffer for climate change, absorbing all of that excess carbon we're producing. And of course, that's making the ocean warm rapidly as a result. And I think we're finding that the ocean too has its limits. I think that's been kind of a hard concept for many to grasp. Climate change, as well as overfishing, pollution, and other industrial activities are causing often irreversible loss to the ocean's habitat and biodiversity. So the oceans and the animals and the humans who depend on it, we're all at risk. And you all know that last year, the United Nations warned that 1 million species on our planet are in danger of extinction, and a big part of that is the ocean. So the proof is everywhere you look. And to bring it more closely to home, the Gulf of Maine, which is heating up faster than 99% of the world's large bodies of salt water, recorded its single hottest day this summer on August 14th, reaching 69.85 degrees Fahrenheit, a full degree warmer than the previous record set in August of 2012. We do a lot of our research in the Gulf of Maine, and we're seeing severe loss of biodiversity and threats to both marine ecosystems and, of course, the humans who depend on those ecosystems. And to make matters worse, on September 15th, the Arctic sea ice cover shrank to the second lowest extent since modern record keeping began in the late 1970s. And oh, have I mentioned fires? Or oh, have I mentioned hurricanes? The 2020 Atlantic hurricane season is nearing an all-time record for the number of storms, 25 so far this season, including the latest, Delta, which is about to pummel the Gulf Coast, I think tomorrow even. And of course, even closer to home in Boston, we're experiencing 100-year storms much more frequently than every 100 years. Just a couple of years ago, the aquarium itself was nearly flooded. The aquarium T-stop was flooded, along with many other businesses on Boston's downtown waterfront. So without some dramatic action and interventions, these impacts are only going to be more severe, whether it's from the seafood we all love to eat, to the beaches we cherish, to the ocean animals we love, from increases in sea level to even more dramatic weather patterns. And so we're working at the aquarium through our research and our rescue arms, and they're called our Anderson Cabot Center for Ocean Life, that's our research arm, and our Animal Care Center and Sea Turtle Hospital in Quincy, our rescue arm, to ensure a vibrant and vital ocean for generations to come. We do that through animal care and research, through education and advocacy, and we're safeguarding endangered and threatened species and their habitats. And we're hoping through this process to inspire people to take action to protect our blue planet. And we're also working on state and local and federal policies that do the same. We're doing all of this because we know that the challenges facing our ocean are just too big and too complex for any of us to handle alone. And we know that the most effective way to solve these complex problems is to work in partnership with those who are actually embedded in the problems. And I'm really grateful for this particular opportunity to share more about our work and to explore ways in which where we might work more closely together in the future as our organizations. Sometimes our partnerships are with scientists who are monitoring marine mammal populations and ecosystems. Sometimes those partners are fishermen who are watching their tried and true fishing grounds literally dry up. And sometimes it's industry struggling with unintended consequences of their work. And of course, sometimes it's with fellow NGO partners like yourselves. In our organization, the Anderson Cabot Center for Ocean Life, its sole purpose is to find solutions to ocean threats, both in our own backyard and beyond. As we pursue solutions, we're innovating new technologies, we're educating individuals, and again, as I said before, we're advocating to create and change policy. And that's a bit of a new body of work for us, certainly in the last couple of years. Some of you may not know that we are the first modern aquarium in the country. This was to have been our 50th anniversary. We're celebrating it a little bit differently than I think we intended. So let me give you a couple of examples, specific examples of the work we're doing. So I'm going to start with, so how do we use the ocean as a food source while not depleting it? So this December marks the 12th year that the aquarium has been working with Gorton's Seafood in Gloucester to help certify their products as sustainable. This work's important because it means that Gorton's seafood products are caught or farmed in ways that protect the long-term supply of seafood and minimize impact on marine ecosystems. And of course, they're a large global brand. Another example is around fishing gear, ropes or the vertical lines in the water column that entangle animals like whales and sharks and sea turtles and often result in fatalities. We have scientists who are working with fishermen on the South Shore to test ropes that'll break away under the stress and pressure of large marine animals to reduce those entanglement problems. The rigor and longevity of our work has solidified our stature as experts on a range of topics, from fisheries ecology and bycatch, and on animals including sharks, sea turtles. And of course, what perhaps we're best known for is our work on the iconic and endangered North Atlantic right whale. We're building networks to extend our knowledge and impact and to learn from individuals working to solve these challenges, not only in the deep ocean, but in the near ocean as well. We recently announced a partnership with Sea Ahead, launching what we're calling the Blue Swell Incubator Program. And this incubator is supporting early founders with new ocean-related technologies and business concepts in areas like aquaculture, offshore renewable energy, and different enabling technologies. The type that has the potential to change existing industries and maybe even create new ones. We've raised nearly $1.5 million for this incubator, and later this month we'll be announcing our first cohort of founders, which is really exciting. We're also building global partnerships, and I think this program is sort of a hidden gem in our portfolio. Through what we call our Marine Action Conservation Fund, or MCAF, we're supporting emerging ocean leaders in developing countries. We provide funding in the form of micro grants for urgent and time-sensitive projects. We set up a COVID emergency fund, for example, earlier this year. And some of those recipients who have received our micro grants, then we are chosen as fellows and we engage with them a bit more deeply through our aquarium programming. But these MCAF grantees and fellows, they embody this entrepreneurial community-centric spirit that's needed to continue to have a global impact on ocean conservation. So even from Central Wharf, we have that global reach. They've played key roles. These are just some really highlights of our MCAF fellows. They've played key roles in the full legal protection of manta rays in Peru, the designation of Costa Rica's first ever shark sanctuary, and the creation of Senegal's first marine animal stranding network, just to name a few of their accomplishments. But let me take us back again closer to home. Some of the research on sea turtles that the center does relies on close collaboration with our veterinarians in our main building and our biologists in the Anderson Cabot Center for Ocean Life, who work in our, sometimes in our sea turtle rescue program. So most of you probably know that sea turtles spend their summers feeding off the coast of New England. And then in late fall and early winter, as they migrate south and the temperatures change, another climate impact, get stuck in the hook of Cape Cod and they literally can't navigate their way out. As the temperatures cool, they become hypothermic or cold stunned. And we're working with volunteers with Mass Audubon who walk the beaches of Cape Cod. They bring these cold stunned sea turtles that have washed ashore to our Quincy Animal Care Center for really essential emergency care. Typically, we're taking care of Kemp's Ridley sea turtles, the rarest and most endangered of the 7 sea turtle species. But every now and then we rescue a handful of leatherbacks or a loggerhead. A couple of winters ago, we cared for a notable turtle named Munchkin, the largest loggerhead we have ever rehabilitated. She weighed in at 330 pounds. She was discovered injured and hypothermic, and our rescue team rehabilitated her over the course of about 7 months. Prior to her release, though, Anderson Cabot Center scientist Dr. Kara Dodge tagged Munchkin with a GPS satellite tag so we could learn more about her behavior in the wild, because we don't often know what happens to them once they're released. Those tags have helped us identify high use areas that can be relayed to fishermen and others in real time to help them avoid unwanted interactions with this protected species. Munchkin was returned to the wild last July, and I was there, and it was quite a sight to behold. We collected 1 year of tracking data on her before her tag stopped transmitting, and that's about the average time. And we last saw her this past July swimming off the coast of North Carolina. So our team continues to learn from this wise and resilient turtle. To date, we have successfully released about 85% of the turtles in our care, which is terrific. And as a result, these animals can continue to survive and thrive and help increase the population size so they're no longer threatened or endangered. So I hope that you'll start to see that the aquarium itself, the wonderful institution on Central Wharf that is beloved and iconic in New England, is really just one piece of a larger conservation organization. It just happens to be the most well-known one. And I have to also say the one most impacted by the pandemic. And I didn't feel like I could do this talk without talking a bit about what's happened during the pandemic. So let's go back to the spring. We closed the doors of the aquarium to the public on March 13th. It was a Friday, I'll never forget. Even though they remained closed for 18 weeks, we had about 35 incredibly dedicated staff on Central Wharf every day caring for the 20,000 animals that live on Central Wharf, and of course taking care of the infrastructure that supports them. So in many ways, during those months where we were closed to the public, for the animals it was business as usual, just a lot quieter than they're used to. Also, when the pandemic hit, our scientists were just getting back into the field after a winter hiatus and preparing for their summer field seasons, which is their peak time for research. Summer plans and any ongoing field work just stopped overnight. And so our scientists were able to continue their research to the extent they could in the lab, and then they obviously continued to publish, which was terrific. And in our sea turtle hospital, rehabilitation work continued for a handful of sea turtles that were still healing from their illnesses and hypothermia. By March, we had already successfully stabilized and rehabilitated about 200 turtles. So time passed, those 18 weeks, the time ticked by, and we finally got the go-ahead to reopen. At the main building, the aquarium itself, we prepared, much like you've probably heard in the news from other zoos and aquariums and museums. We created a one-way path through our exhibits. We implemented timed ticketing. We trained our staff on how to enforce mask wearing and social distancing guidelines. We also started acclimating our animals to having guests back in the building. We did things like we played crowd noises for the penguins. We reopened on July 16th at a significantly limited capacity, 15% of building capacity to be exact. And if you've not been in a while, it's a great time to come. That makes for a wonderful experience, but it is not a sustainable business model. We continue to be delighted that people are comfortable and eager to come visit, and yet, like so many of our peers, we're missing the late summer and early fall tourism. We're seeing fewer guests during the week for sure, but we're fortunate in that we're seeing sustained interest on the weekends. But back to July, when some field work started back up, just looking a little different. Our right whale research team, who has spent every summer for the last 40 years conducting research in the Gulf of Maine, they quarantined as a family unit before heading north. One of our shark researchers drove from Maine to Key West, towing a camper in order to stay socially distanced from others. And our aerial survey team got back up in the air, donning full flight suits and face masks. Meanwhile, we continue to attract grants for our conservation science and research. We're seeing an interest, as I mentioned before, in our blue tech work, especially around wind energy related projects in the region. Our sea turtle rescue and rehabilitation work also drew to its annual close, although we have a new season coming up shortly. We quietly released the remaining few rehabilitated sea turtles, this time on uncrowded beaches at sunrise, into the warm waters off the Cape. And in the past years, these releases have been accompanied by great fanfare, including media coverage and cheering crowds, just not this year. When we closed the aquarium to the public, we also pivoted really quickly to using social media to tell our stories about the ongoing care in the aquarium, as well as our research and rescue work. Every weekday at 11 a.m., we broadcast virtual visits aquarists and scientists who have been used to doing their work sort of quietly behind the scenes suddenly became stars of our Facebook page. Production values went down and we had our share of technical difficulties, but we continued educating and inspiring people with the wonders of the ocean since we couldn't do that in person. And we heard from countless families and teachers and librarians. I even heard from my own doctor about how they were relying on our virtual visits to supplement their at-home learning. And of course, the pandemic has affected us financially. Like my colleagues and like many zoos and aquariums around the country, we rely on ticket sales and on earned income, like events, for the majority of our revenue, 80% of our revenue in our case. So we had to make some very painful reductions this spring and let go valued staff members. But we've also learned that we can go on just in different ways. We've become more innovative, we've become more agile, we're doing more with less, and we're taking those lessons forward. And we know that partnerships like those we can hope to develop with you are also part of our strategy. Our research continues. We're preparing for another sea turtle rescue season. We're developing more and different virtual programming, both free and hopefully as a way to generate revenue that can serve the needs of individuals and families, as well as teachers and schools. We are determined to make it to the other side of this pandemic because our ocean needs us. And so I invite you all to spread the word about the ocean, how important it is, the life in it, help us all protect it. I'm confident that together we can tackle these challenges in front of us as we continue to protect all of this blue planet. Thank you so very much.
Well, Vikki, that was just wonderful. I am absolutely inspired by your mission and how you're managing through the pandemic. I was told when I first started, I'm a brand new at TNC, I was told that there's this incredible woman leader I needed to meet, I needed to become friends with, and it is just so true. Thank you so much for telling us about the exciting work you're doing at the aquarium and at the Anderson Cabot Center. I don't know about our other viewers, but I knew the aquarium is a driver of Boston's tourist economy, right? I just know just how many people come from all over the world to visit it. But it was good to learn how you're also a world-class research facility, like right here in Massachusetts. And I just can't imagine what it takes to balance your research mission with being such an important public resource, a go-to, like entertainment, right? People come learn about fish and have a good time. And you as a leader, as you're thinking through the complexity of all of this, how do you balance it in your own mind?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think it it varies day by day, but I really I was attracted to the community. I'm new to the aquarium, 2 years and a little bit, and what really appealed to me was this ability to connect the dots. That I really look at us as an enterprise, and we have these different functions, but together you need all of it. You need the public facing education and inspiration. And having run a conservation organization, Ocean Conservancy, in the past, I would have loved to have had the opportunity to directly engage with the public like we can do with the 1.3, 1.4 million visitors that come through our doors, pre-pandemic numbers, and to also have this ability to research some of the challenges. So the animals that you see inside of our aquarium are there for a reason. We're doing all this great work rescuing turtles, but our grande dame of the giant ocean tank, Myrtle, the turtle who's been with us for almost the whole 50 years of our existence, helps connect the story. So I think we're really trying to present a more complete picture of how all of this fits together. And so I don't think of it so much as balancing as being one big story with different parts.
Oh, I can see that. And I could see how your background in science communication is perfect because you've got the science and then you're using the aquarium as the way to really communicate it to the public writ large.
Deb, the other thing that I think has changed and is something that's I'm very passionate about is the policy and advocacy side of it, because we have had this platform, but I don't think we have fully utilized that platform to engage the policy community locally and nationally to the extent that we really can. And so that's been exciting to see. And frankly, our visitors are demanding that. You know,
Yeah.
scientists are no longer comfortable themselves standing on the sidelines, and visitors are coming in saying, how can we help? What can we do?
Right. That makes sense. Let me just, for a second, we're moving now into the question and answer portion of the webinar. So just as a reminder, if you have a question for Vikki, please share them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And we did get a question about, what's the question says, it's so exciting to hear about the aquarium's programs and how they truly align in many ways with TNC, especially focused on marine fisheries around Cape Cod and the Gulf of Maine. How can we collaborate? And I see with your new focus on policy, that might be a great place for us to be working together.
I totally agree. I think we are, if I'm not mistaken, I think our institutions both sit on the Massachusetts Commission on Ocean Acidification. I know that's one place where we're currently both represented. We are also part of something called the Aquarium Conservation Partnership, which is a community of 22 aquariums across the country who have a stronger conservation focus. But I think, as I said in my remarks, there's none of this happens alone, and I think the policy work we could do together is a terrific idea. I'm happy to continue to explore that.
There was another question about whether or not the New England Aquarium is involved in any projects to create ocean preserves offshore in New England. And
yeah, so
can you describe?
Yes. So you may be familiar with the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts National Marine Monument. Our team, so we've been doing these aerial surveys, monitoring right whales for 50 years. And obviously through those surveys, we've been documenting and know a lot about what's happening in the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts. In fact, it was our aerial research that helped the Obama administration designate the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts Marine National Monument in 2016.
Oh, that's great.
So that one's near and dear to our, we all know that the current administration is trying to open up the monument to commercial interests, and we are working to fight that fight along with this other collection of aquariums around the country.
We've gotten some questions about how people can get involved, and there was one comment thanking you for the fabulous education program. This person said during high school his son was a Blue Ambassador climate team, and then staff as part of a summer camp.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear that.
And what's the status of programs for teens during the pandemic? And then a second question about how people can get involved in the Turtle Watch program on the Cape or other volunteer projects, perhaps even over this winter.
Yeah, so both really good questions, and the Climate Teens project is near and dear to my heart. We do have, I will say had and still have a volunteer and teen intern program. We've had to reduce it in size during the pandemic, but we did maintain our Climate Teens program, and that's just an extension of our commitment to continuing to connect the dots between the ocean and climate change. In terms of volunteer efforts, if you go to neaq.org, there are lots of opportunities there. We've had to reduce the size of our turtle rescue project for this particular year, and I actually need to get back to you to give you more details about how volunteers can engage, because in past years we've relied heavily on volunteers to help us. There's a place on our website, neaq.org, where you can get more information about that.
Well, that's great. You know, we do a follow-up email to this
Oh, good. Okay.
We have the recording for people to share, but we also provide resources. So in that follow-up email, we'll include any information you pass.
Terrific. Thank you.
There was also a question about climate impacts, and this person was curious about what your scientists are seeing every day that we may not know about in terms of how climate change is impacting the waters just right off of Massachusetts.
Yeah, so I think probably well, I want to step back and sort of answer this in two ways. First, there are kind of three or maybe even four main ways that I think we really connect our work to this existential threat of climate change. The first, and I've sort of alluded to it, is that when you're studying a body of water like the Gulf of Maine and the animals that inhabit it, you know, you cannot ignore the impacts of climate change. So it's sort of like climate change has had an impact on all of our work, and we are seeing differences. Probably the most, I don't know, depressing one is that we saw no right whales during the summer field season this summer.
Horrible.
And that is a first. And so, you know, we have a lot of theories about that. The water's warming, food's going up further north, changing patterns, and you know, we can't begin to understand them and protect them if we don't know where they are. So that's just like an immediate sort of acute impact. But we're also, we founded something, and I always have to check because it's a long acronym. It's NNOCCI, which stands for the National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation, where for about a decade, we've been using kind of evidence-based communications strategies to teach other institutions like ours and the staffs at other institutions like ours how to better communicate about the impacts of climate change. So it's a sort of train the trainer model. And we have worked with literally you know, hundreds of other institutions around the country, helping them teach their visitors about climate change. Climate teens, we've already talked about. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention our own work on the downtown waterfront in Boston. We are, I see us as stewards of Central Wharf, and we are trying to talk about, with the city and others, what's a more comprehensive plan for the downtown waterfront that allows Boston to protect itself as a major waterfront city from, you know, rising seas and storm surges, which you saw some images of from just a couple of years ago, but it continues to happen. So it's both observations, from everything from observations in the field all the way down to how do we work with the city to, no kidding, make Boston a demonstration project for how a city like us can protect ourselves from the onslaught of climate change.
Yeah, you know, back to the question about how we could be working more closely together, TNC and the aquarium. One of my top priorities is thinking about sea level rise and what that means for Massachusetts. So much of our population is vulnerable to sea level rise. And then, of course, you know, we've got our ocean health program, and the warming of the oceans is changing biodiversity. And how do we make sure we put in wind in a way that it's not having an impact? I'm very excited to be working more with you.
Yeah.
So there was a personal question that hopped into our queue. What inspired you to get into the marine field? Okay, I'll tell you the real story. I'm an Army brat. I moved around all over the world, but I ended up on the Gulf Coast for my high school years, and absolutely fell in love with the ocean, and I wanted to be a marine biologist. And I had a science teacher who was a bit of a mentor, and he told me there was no place for women in science. And I'm of an age where, you know, I've heard this story multiple times. So he said, you know, I think, you know, you're not going to find a career in science. So I pursued sort of a liberal arts career,
had my own PR firm, worked for a lot of big PR firms, was recruited by the Pew Charitable Trusts about, a third of the way into my career, to start what eventually became CWEB, which you mentioned in your very gracious introduction. And I never turned back, because I think what's happened is I have kind of been able to take this passion I have for the ocean with and connect it to a set of skills I developed around, how to communicate the complexities of these problems in a way that I hope people feel inspired and better understand.
Yeah. So that's a wonderful story. And
You never know where you're going to end up.
I'm so glad that you ended up here. Let's see, I have Eleanor, we've got a comment or a question. It's exciting to see how you've worked with a commercial food company like Gordon's to harvest fish sustainably. Do you have any other such liaisons or partnerships in the works?
Yeah, so we have actually a list, and I don't have them here, but we have worked with, and this work, again, predates me, but there are a number of, we had a very robust sustainable seafood program years ago. I sort of worked on that and knew of the New England Aquarium's work in that space prior to coming here. Now we've started to really target the larger scale producers. So I'm happy to share the other connections we have.
That is really great. What do you see as the future of the Stellwagen Bank Marine Sanctuary, and what improvements would you like to see in the management of this important area?
Yeah, so we actually have an exhibit in the main building of the aquarium that talks about the wonders of Stellwagen Bank. We have a partnership with Boston Harbor Cruises, and we run our whale watch program through Boston Harbor Cruises that goes out to Stellwagen Bank multiple times a day, where you are literally guaranteed to see whales. And if anyone on this call has not taken one of those trips, I'm giving a shameless plug, because it is a magnificent thing to do. And it's going to get cold here, so I think they're still running the trips now. We work very closely with the National Marine Sanctuaries Office inside of NOAA, and with the National Marine Sanctuaries Foundation. And I won't get too technical here, but in the sanctuary, more uses are allowed. And then, of course, in Stellwagen Bank, in the monument, less is allowed. I think the bigger answer to this is and actually California just signed on to this yesterday, I believe, the protecting 30% of the ocean by 2030. I think we've got to make people understand the benefits of something like Stellwagen and the monument, the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts Marine Monument, and start to get people to think, and you guys are really good at this. You know how to protect land. How do we convey that same concept to protecting areas of the ocean? And as basic as that seems, I think we've still not quite cracked that nut because people don't have a concept of how you can protect in the ocean. It's not like you can put fences around these pelagic fish that swim around. So I think a lot of this is awareness building. I think, we've made great strides, but we really need to push to be protecting more of the ocean.
I love that. I think it's a great way TNC could be working more closely with you, because you're right. We got our start protecting the special places, the greatest places in the country and around the world. And the difference, of course, is it's hard for an average person to go and visit.
Right. You don't see them. You don't see it. You don't see it, and it's hard to know. But Northeast Canyons and Seamounts is called that because it's basically Grand Canyon under the ocean, and it's magnificent.
So we have to be able to tell the stories together.
Yeah.
I love that. We actually have a couple of questions that came in on email, so I'm reading it off of my phone. So in the past, the aquarium worked in the Phoenix Islands, a small island nation in the Pacific, to help the residents who will be displaced by the effects of climate change. How did the aquarium select that location as a project so far away from Boston?
Yeah, so that's another project in the, a jewel in the crown. It at the time actually was, I think, one of the first and largest protected areas. And I have to credit Dr. Greg Stone, who was a scientist at the aquarium at the time. He had a particular passion for that part of the world, and we stayed engaged with that for many, many years, until actually just about 2 years ago, where as was part of the plan, it was turned over to the government for its management and protection. But super proud. And, I think often these cases are often driven by individual passions, and that's how that one happened.
That is how often these things happen. We also got a question about the slide that had all the wind turbines.
Oh, yeah.
How are you involved in wind energy? What's that particular slide relating to?
So we, through the Blue Swell program that I mentioned, we do receive funding from a number of wind energy companies to help them better understand the areas in which they are siting their turbines, and we're sort of helping them from a conservation ecological perspective. That's become a growing part of our work.
Well, that makes sense. It's something we're involved in as well, as you may know.
Yep.
As Cape Wind is being built out,
Yep.
as some of the big projects are being built off, off of the coast of Maine and Rhode Island, we're thinking about, and not Maine, Massachusetts and Rhode Island, we're thinking about, how can it be done in a way that enhances the ocean health and helps the fisheries as opposed to harms it. Because
so we should definitely talk, and I think we may already be part of a Greentown Labs where we're both part of the of something from Cape Wind. I
think so. Yes, we're working. We are, not us personally, which is why we can't remember it top of mind. But our staff are working together.
Yeah.
Scientists from TNC and the aquarium also both sit on Massachusetts Commission on Ocean Acidification. And I know the aquarium's engaged in many partnerships in the state and around the world. What do you see as the benefit of partnerships like this?
Oh gosh, we just, none of us can do it alone. I wish we could. And I think the broader ecosystem of NGOs would, I hope this doesn't sound too idealistic or Pollyanna, but I just think the problems are getting so big that we need to be leveraging our expertise together. And we make a more powerful voice when we're connected. As simple as that seems, sort of move beyond our visitors, competing for visitors or competing for members or competing for donors, and really start to think about how can we work together to address these big, hairy, audacious problems.
Yeah, if we're not working together, we're not going to accomplish our goals.
I don't see it. And I've sort of been preaching this for my whole career, and that we've waxed and waned as a community, I think, but right now, and I think this pandemic has sort of hit us all this way, is like, this is a fragile world, and we need to be coming together.
Yeah, one community, I agree. Here's a question that I bet a lot of people have thought about. What advice do you have for addressing the increasing interactions along the Northeast coast between humans on the one hand and sharks and seals on the other?
Yeah, boy. So, we're going into their habitats. I mean, I think I would start by saying, the ocean is their domain, and I think we have a shark scientist on staff who says, look, you wouldn't sort of you wouldn't get out of your protected car on a safari knowing you were going into an area with lots of lions and tigers. I think we have to just be much more cognizant of what we're doing. The seal populations, of course, on the one hand, is a conservation success story in and of itself, but it has attracted more sharks. So I think the answer is, again, more awareness, recognizing probably don't go into the water when you see a bunch of seals, and better monitoring. This is big parts of our coastline do not have adequate monitoring to let us know where those sharks actually are, and I think that's another piece to this.
Yeah, yeah. I think many of the people watching you have today have been at Cape Cod and have gotten those warnings that, oh, a shark has been sighted, and then you see the boat coming through and you yell to your kids, or in my case, my husband, to get out of the water. And so we just have to do more of that. I think that's, humans in nature, there's always this balance and tension.
And I think we're not as used, for some reason, we've just not been as used to that in the ocean. This is another contradiction. We're just maybe not quite as used to it in the ocean as we are on land.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. We have a question about your education programs, and it's what exhibits or programs at the aquarium help educate visitors as to what they could be doing at home, such as conserving water or using organic lawn management to reduce water pollution that flows into the ocean.
So I am so proud of how we are really increasing the presence of practical things you can do through all of our exhibit path. We do that mostly through interpreters on the floor who interact with visitors because, we don't want to put too much in words, and there's a lot of research that says, people don't often read all of that, but we have had, and again, this is prior to the pandemic, things are a bit on a pause right now, but we had a high, interpreter to visitor ratio where you could really talk to people about the kinds of things they can do. We have information on our website. We're really trying to make much more of this action-oriented. Our cafe, for example, it's closed now, but, we made our cafe single-use plastic free, which we had not done because, we knew we needed to walk the talk. So we're really trying to look at everything we're doing and everything we're communicating in a way that makes it more actionable for people.
That's great, because there is really a great opportunity to link people with action. You get them into the aquarium, they get all excited, and it's
policy action too. We had a very successful postcard writing campaign this fall that it was actually around Northeast Canyons and seamounts, and it's been exciting to see that people are actually willing to right there after the tour to fill out a postcard, and so we're trying to take advantage of those opportunities, and we're doing some testing.
That's terrific. So a great question came in by email. What do you see as one of the biggest challenges facing marine research and conservation right now?
I have struggled with this for the last 30 years of my work in this related field. And I would say, and don't quote me on this, but environmental funding is still something like 7 or 8% of sort of what gets funded more broadly, and of that, ocean related funding is something like 3 or maybe 4% of broader environmental funding. So we are just woefully underrepresented considering we're 70% of the planet. So I don't know if it's that we're out of sight, out of mind. I don't know if we've just been brainwashed into thinking there are plenty of fish in the sea. I think a big problem is that people do not understand the extent to which the ocean drives pretty much everything that happens on the planet.
Yeah, as somebody who's had a whole career in thinking about environmental policy and regulation, so much of that funding is because it's been tethered to human health.
Yep.
So making the case of the link between human health and ocean health, I think, is critical. And that's something we're thinking about at TNC. And it seems like that might be.
And we're starting to see some of that. We're starting to see movement around, for example, you know, plastic that ends up in the ocean and then is ingested by the fish, and then we eat the fish. And, you know, there are absolutely those pathways, but it is, I think we just suffer from an out of sight, out of mind problem. And frankly, when you're sitting on the beach in the summer and you're kind of looking around, except for that occasional seal you may see or shark in our part of the world, you know, it looks pretty good. So I think it's really hard to convey the significance of the problem. I have often said the problems in the ocean are kind of like a terrible cancer. By the time you see the symptom, it's often too late. So we've got to get people to understand this.
We've got to be able to tell the ocean stories.
Yeah.
In a way that people can understand. I totally get it. You can't solve a problem if people don't know there's a problem to solve.
Right.
It's for all of us who really care about the planet. This is a story that needs to be told over and over. So we got a great question. What are 3 ways people watching this can help the aquarium right now? I think it's really compelling, the challenges that you're having with the pandemic.
Yeah. So I did not intend to, you know, have a plea for donations. But I have to do. I mean, when asked that question, right now, making a gift to the aquarium, to our Mission Forward Fund, which we began on March 13th when we closed, is the single best thing you can do, because we are operating at a deficit, and we're operating at a deficit right now because of the current restrictions in place. In order for us to maintain the social distancing requirements, which are very important and necessary as established by the state and the city, we quite literally can't get more people into our building. And so we're sort of stuck at this lower number of visitors for the foreseeable future. So we really need to be making up that revenue. The other thing I would say is share the story or parts of the story you heard today with your friends. We are much more than the facility on Central Wharf. We really are this, as you said so eloquently, Deb, we're this science and research center that is really connecting the dots on what you see in the aquarium with what's actually happening out in the wild. And then come and visit us.
I think that's great. We've got a bunch of more questions. I just have to pull it up we're getting some that are email. A lot of people didn't know that the aquarium was involved in research. Can you talk about any of your upcoming research projects? And let me actually add another question that came in. Speaking of this, this commentator said that he's read that the ocean provides 50% of the fresh oxygen for the planet. So every other breath we take is courtesy of the ocean.
Yes, that's true.
Is there a way to lift the visibility of this so that we can have a new narrative about whales capturing millions of tons of carbon, et cetera? What are the stories we might be able to tell?
Well, that every other breath you take, I cannot think of anything that is actually more compelling than that. It's, you know, the air we breathe is thanks to the ocean. And I didn't say it today, but I try and say it as often as I can. So thank you for that reminder. I mean, I think it's just, again, we missed this connection in science class or something. But, and then the other question.
Research.
Oh, research. Yes. So this is something I knew about the work of the New England Aquarium on the research side, but I will tell you, it's probably been my biggest surprise coming into this role, how people don't know about that part of our work. And it's been baked into our structure since the very, very beginning. There has always been a conservation science and research component to the New England Aquarium. I think we just didn't talk about it. And so it's been 3 years ago now that we intentionally created the Anderson Cabot Center for Ocean Life to sort of house the scientists that had been previously a part of the aquarium, like Greg Stone and others that I mentioned earlier. And our hope is that by doing so, we can draw more attention to the work that our researchers are doing and still connect it to the work of the aquarium. I think this body of work around turtle conservation, sea turtle conservation, is something we're very, very excited about. Our work on sharks, our work on the right whale, those are kind of our three big, signature species around which we're trying to focus much of our work, historically and also going forward.
Somebody who's just heard that said, don't you have research that's helping to lead the way in changing how the military and fishing lanes operate?
Yes, so that was, it's all connected, but that was probably one of this institution's biggest conservation victories was, it was our research that helped move the shipping lanes. But again, this was our right whale research, helped move shipping lanes to protect North Atlantic right whales. That work continues.
What I love about that story and that example is it shows how sometimes small changes can make a huge difference. Like, it was not the end of the world for the ships and the military to just go in a slightly different place. It's just sort of like our wildlife crossings. When
exactly.
we figure out how to do culverts and bridges, and it's how do we make sure that there is a migration of species for
well, and I think what has a benefit we have is that we've been doing this research for 45 years. And so, I love when a scientist will say, it's not all what you happen upon is not always intentional. Sometimes, you're working on one thing and you all of a sudden realize, oh my goodness, this data could help me figure out a different problem. So because we have these long-standing data sets, we're able to, sort of take the work we've been doing on whales and apply it to marine protected areas, for example. So
so listen, we're getting close to the end of our time. I could just keep going with you.
Me too. This is wonderful.
So if you have a final message in a minute or less, we would love to.
Oh my goodness. Well, I just want to thank you, Deb, and I want to thank TNC. You've been so generous and so available, and I've really enjoyed our conversations prior to this one. I think this is a really critical moment for institutions like ours, and we have, so much to contribute and so much to give, and we need to make sure we're around for the next 50 years. And it's heartfelt when I say, let's continue this conversation and figure out ways that we can take some of the expertise that you have with the expertise we have in this New England region that we love so much.
Well, I really personally look forward to continuing to work together with you, and thank you for graciously welcoming me to the environmental community.
No, of course.
We are going to follow up with an email to all the folks on this webinar with information about how to connect more closely with the aquarium, where they're located, their website, and so forth. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. And I want to especially thank you for your support of the Nature Conservancy. Your support makes all of this work possible. And we hope you're enjoying these webinars. Please share them with your friends. We're going to send you this follow-up email with a link to the video. You can also follow us on social media, which is conserve_MA. That's on Facebook and Instagram, to keep up with our work and get updates on upcoming virtual opportunities to connect with us. If you had a chance to watch our sneak peek of PBS's new documentary series, Age of Nature, please join me and a few of my colleagues for a panel discussion in partnership with New England Public Media next Tuesday, October 13th. And join us on Thursday, October 15th for a webinar with NBC Sports Boston anchor and mental health advocate, Trenny Kusnierek. As always, you can find the latest webinar schedule and registration links at nature.org MA webinars. And thank you again for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.